So let's go ahead and take our second caller now. I'm going to pull you up. Bean, you're on the air. We can hear you. And I did get your question from the call screener. But if you'd like, I think it'd be appropriate to let you sort of open up and share your question with us yourself.
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, I had framed my initial kind of preparation for this around a specific disagreement I had with a specific person in your community, I guess. But more generally, I guess if we're just having a conversation, I'd like to explore the coherence of methodological individualism in particular. I guess the NAP, that kind of direction would be probably the most fruitful direction to take it.
Sure. I think methodological individualism is something that's more often misunderstood than objected to, and I'll take any opportunity I can get to talk about it. But I don't think that it's going to be suitable to sort of get into a lecture on the topic. So I wonder if there's maybe something in particular that you find contentious or that you're interested in.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like the in a broader sense, the way I understand it, at least, is that any normative deference to the collective that contradicts, um, the individual, the atomized individual's suffering, autonomy, whatever you want to call it, their locus of experience as the normative, you know, uh, preference is bad. That was the original framing. Um, and I guess my contention with that would be, in the broadest sense, like the claim that all social phenomena, you know, are explained and refer to individuals as the primary node of kind of experience doesn't really map onto our shared reality. Everything is more relational based. Like you're even when you're born into the world, before you have any identity, you're forming relationships and understanding of the world through other people, the world around you, which is shaped by other forces beyond any individual's control, like language, markets, property systems, legal norms, contracts, currencies. All of this is not an individually derived thing, nor does it affect individuals alone as the locus of experience. Um, they're all emergent things, right? So I don't understand how you can give deference to an individual in a system where individuals are necessarily collective uh, parts of collective structures. It would be like um, you want to give normative preference to each individual cell in your body because you deny that your body as is an entire unit. It's actually a bunch of individual atomized cells, and you should give preference to those. I don't understand that.
Great. Yeah, I
So
think that's a. Oh, sorry, Zulu, you can take it.
could I just ask for like some quick clarification? Um, so are you kind of pointing at for methodological individualism? Are you pointing at having a problem with like the Austrian economics, or like some legal theory that we're holding?
I'm talking about like the way that you're engaging with experiential reality, like the framework that you're
Right,
using
but in which
to
aspect? Because there are two different aspects that you could be talking about this in. For for the
yeah.
economist, it's a completely different thing than for the jurist, right?
Well, they're both downstream from each other, right? And I'm assuming in your,
Well,
I
we would
haven't
adopt.
engaged with your, sorry,
Well,
what?
so to be clear, we would be methodological individualists on both fronts. Um, but I'm just
Yes.
sort of wanting to know, like, which part are you trying to attack here?
The normative preference for the individual over the collective or over the intersubjective realities in which the individual is confined to.
So let me just offer a quick point. So what I said at first is, I think, really going to be the theme of this conversation, which is that methodological individualism is more misunderstood than attacked, just in general. And that's kind of that's the impression I'm getting here. So methodological individualism, you listed a series of things that you felt couldn't be adequately explained by methodological individualism because of the fact that their emergence involves more than an individual. But methodological individualism has nothing to do with the denial. And I just want to, I'll put a pin right quick here. You're using the word normative. So there's methodological individualism as a sort of sociological tool, and then there's methodological individualism as it plays into the legal theory, which is where you're going to see a little bit more of the normative stuff. But methodological individualism, as you hear it, like in, for example, academia, it's not normally going to be in the normative context. We're normally talking about it as a sociological evaluative tool. So those things that you listed that are examples of socially constructed, collectively organized things, those are the things that methodological individualism is concerned with in the first place. So I think that it sort of indicates the most important misunderstanding, that there's some sort of tension between methodological individualism and things that involve multiple people. Methodological individualism has no interest at all in denying their existence. It rather celebrates their existence, and it's just understanding them as each individual. Well, I guess you use the word atomistically. I don't like to use that because normally people are understanding that to mean as isolated. But we can say atomistically to mean like an individual. Think about the word individual. That's the fundamental building block we're looking at. So let's take any specific example there that you came up with, like laws. If we look at laws and we say, okay, well, in order for a law to make sense, and Zulu, I'm just saying like positive laws here in like a very naive sense. We're just talking about you got a tribe, and we're going to agree, nobody in this tribe paints their house blue. And this is a rule, it's a social norm, it's a moray, and it emerges through, it doesn't make sense as an individual, of course. And
You can, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you can make the stronger case and go like the Kantian perspective and say like, there's a mutual self-interest in some of these norms that are naturally emergent. That's a stronger argument I'm inviting you to incorporate.
Well, I'll make the argument that I'm making, but thanks for the invitation. My point is just to say that to understand what methodological individualism is about, you must understand that methodological individualism. I'm going to maybe start saying just individualism for short because it's too many syllables.
Meth individualism.
They are interested in just understanding these things as through a process that recognizes the individual properly. So there's no tension there in the first place. So I would just say there isn't a problem there. As you put it forward, doesn't seem to correspond to what methodological individualism is or what it does.
Okay. I think I do understand what you're getting at there. I guess the immediate question that comes to mind would be that like if you're framing this, I'm assuming you're framing this how can I put this, relationally to individualism. That's kind of the argument we're dancing around on the deepest level, right? Methodological individualism versus collectivism. Where does the boundary lie? Can you identify like any single functioning institution, social institution, that does not depend on collective recognition to exist?
So I think what needs to be clarified here is all that methodological individualism claims is what is the fundamental like unit in either economics or law. What are we fundamentally studying? What if we break it down into the atoms of this study? What is relevant here? And for methodological individualists, we're saying that, well, the fundamental unit is the individuals, and the collective, some group, that's just a superstructure built on top of the individuals. It's not the other way around. So if you're a doctor and you're studying a human body and seeing if they're a healthy human body or if they've got some sort of disease, well, the fundamental unit there isn't actually the cell. It is the whole human, right? And you can break down that whole human into constituent parts, and one of those parts might not be working properly, but the fundamental unit there is the person you are studying, right? So that's the difference. We're not arbitrarily breaking things down. We're breaking it down as far as it needs to be broken down. All of these, like, I mean, you mentioned currency, I believe, as one of your counterexamples. Well, actually, the Austrians have a perfect account of how currency can arise on a purely individualist basis in methodology. The question is, what are you studying, right? How are you going about this science of economics, for instance? How are you going about this? Well, you have to study the individuals. You can't just go behind this veil of ignorance and study the systems. That doesn't actually work, right? It just simply, you are not studying the right thing there.
So let me go use your own analogy. The individuals inside a human body are those constituent parts you were talking about. If your pancreas isn't functioning, it's going to
Well, then
affect
that
the
would be the
whole.
wrong methodology.
You're saying that you would want to treat a body holistically rather than trying to treat underlying individual conditions?
You definitely want to treat it holistically. If the pancreas is not, if fixing the pancreas problem, it's like, oh, we got a perfectly working pancreas, but the medicine we had to apply also blinded them and made them brain dead. But the pancreas is working perfectly fine. Like, that would be a very bad doctor.
Aren't you making an argument for a unified structure under which all those constituent parts that compose the individual
I'm talking
can
about what the
be
correct unit is in this study. The correct unit
so
for the doctor is the patient you're studying. The correct
so
unit for the
no
economist is the individuals.
so no the
So
correct unit for the
what Zulu's saying is that it's relative to what's being studied, and he gave you an example which the only purpose of this example was to emphasize that point by showing you there are cases where a holistic approach is appropriate because of what the subject of the study is. But he's saying that
granting
for what
normative deference to one or the other doesn't make any sense.
So I wasn't actually being normative at all there. I was being purely descriptive.
You are you well no you did you said you several times said that you should do things. This is the way you should do things. This
So,
produces the best outcome.
if you're going to be a doctor, you're simply not being a doctor if you're treating a single brain cell at the expense of everything else in the body. You're just simply not being a doctor there.
Right, you'd have to account for both the individual atomized parts of the individual and also the collective health of the entire
So
individual as a whole.
the,
so
the unit for the doctor
Both.
is the whole body. The unit for the chemist is the individual molecules. Right? This
When
is
you
how you
go
have different units at different levels of
when you
analysis.
go to a surgeon who specializes in neurosurgery, are
So the
they
specialty for a surgeon just means what they're best at operating on.
no.
Yes.
We operate and solve specific problems by using
Right.
science. We
I think it'll
identify
be
the way
I
the
think it's
human
going to
body
be
interacts
beneficial
with its
for us.
constituent parts.
I think it's going to be beneficial for us to try and not get too distracted by the hypothetical itself. What we're talking about here is that there's a relationship between what's studied and the appropriate level of magnification for
There is
that area of
no
study.
what you're saying when you say appropriate. This is my argument. This is why was what I was trying to get at with the underlying assumption of both models that you're talking to use is that you're saying that the correct level to analyze society is at the individual level. We should give normative deference to individual level analysis over intersubjective or
So
collective.
I need to sort of interrogate this concept of normative deference a little bit here. So if you have like we'll stick with the medical thing just to be on topic, I suppose. If you say that you're comparing two different medicines to treat some given illness, and one of them has been shown to be effective, and the other one hasn't been shown to be effective at all, and you say medicine A is we should give medicine A, then there's this is a statement that's communicating something instrumental. Now, you might say that there's a norm at play there because underlying we have to make the assumption that we're trying to solve the illness at all. There's rather than not. There's some kind of norm at some level there. But the essential aspect of this is that the relationship between the medicine and the illness is objective. And in this sense, it's very important to realize that we're not talking about something that's normative when we have an instrumental relationship between things that are related to each other causally.
Well, so I'll push back on something that you just said, because I mean, to push the analogy further, and this actually goes to my point. I'll use the example of like the mental health epidemic, right? So we have a system right now in place where we treat that as an individual atomized problem. If you have depression, you are given antidepressants. If an increasingly large amount of people in your society are experiencing those conditions, having to be treated with antidepressants, you might be, you know, not understanding that those atomized individuals are being impacted by intersubjective or collective forces, societal forces, right?
So yeah, so look, I didn't want to really get into the medical metaphor myself too much. So let's just go back out to the actual. What are we talking about here? We're talking about economics and politics. So you're saying you got this person who's, the doctor's treating the specific patient as an individual, but then you've got this other problem where, what about the problem where there's a whole bunch of people in society who are depressed? And that's not an individualistic issue. So what we would argue is that it is an individualistic issue, because in order to understand what's causing the depression, you have to understand the individuals that are getting depressed. The fact that you're using an abstraction to refer to them as a group, you're statistically analyzing them in order to say, well, there's this percentage of the population that are depressed. That's fine. Those things can have utility, I suppose. But the point is that we're making is that what you need to look at in order to understand that is the individuals that are getting depressed. In order to
Right.
explain, so if you say, there's X percentage of the population is depressed, you're saying something about a set of individuals, and it's going to be through understanding them as individuals that you're able to come up with the solution to that problem, is what we're
You
saying.
don't think that if your society is suddenly producing like, let's say that your society exists in a certain state. We don't have to use mental health. We can use, because that might be a touchy subject for some people. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. Well, it's just like wealth centralization, right? You live in a country that has a certain amount of um, upward mobility, economic upward mobility, and suddenly wealth starts to centralize rapidly, and the people at the bottom don't feel like they have much of a way to engage with that, so they stop engaging with society in general. They don't feel like they have upward mobility. They don't feel like the game is worth being played, right? Now, if you're treating all of these individuals as just individual atomized actors making their own discrete decisions to disengage from society, you might be, missing the forest for the trees, as it were.
Can you explain what
There
that
are
would mean? Like, what are we missing?
Well, you're missing that there are that individuals, all of our subjective experiences are relational. There is no
Specifically,
That's part of
you exist.
methodological individualism.
Absolutely, but
specifically,
you're
which incorrect prediction, sorry, would we make on methodological individualism, which you could predict
well, I just
if you had
well, I
methodological
just gave you one,
collectivism?
right? So if you were treating all of these individual people who are
So we couldn't predict.
disengaging from society because they don't have upward mobility, they don't perceive that they have upward mobility or the ability to advance in social status or whatever framework you want to use,
So this is
all
why
of
I
these
wanted to know
frameworks.
which specific field you were talking about. Like, are you talking about? I don't know what field you're talking about right now. Are you talking about economics? Because it wouldn't matter in economics. Like that, you're just not studying whether people feel X, Y, or Z. That's not
Well,
what
you're
you're talking
talking about,
about
I'm
in
talking about the
economics,
political framework.
right? But what specific field are you talking about?
So the political framework has,
Political
that's why
framework
I keep branching off into different fields, because they're all deriving this uh, preference
So we
for
adopt methodological
treating. Yeah.
individualism for specific fields. We adopt it in law and we adopt it in economics. Those are the two that I know about. Like, what
Those are
specific field
different.
are you talking about in critiquing us on adopting methodological individualism?
It's not a. It's not a political position that you hold.
I don't know
As
what you mean by that.
as anti-capital. What is your specific branch of anti-capitalism or
We're not
anarcho-capitalism? Sorry,
anti-capitalists.
anarcho-capitalism. I misspoke. Sorry.
So we are anarcho-capitalists. We agree with Murray Rothbard. We come from that strain, but I'm not sure what specifically you're critiquing about our position. Like, are you critiquing the economics or the law?
The normative. So both the economics and the. I don't know why I have to explain this to you. You should know this. Both of those systems rely on the fact that you treat the individual as the locus of experience.
Okay, so let's just do it this way. Can you just give us an example of this? Give me here's what I'm asking specifically. Explain an example of giving the normative deference to the individual as opposed to giving the normative deference to the collective. So explain to me what those two things look like so we can understand what you're proposing that we're doing.
Yeah. So let's say that. Well, rather than me telling you what you're doing and then making you poke holes in my assertion of what your position is, let me allow you to establish Ancapistan, and then I will ask you, a couple questions along the way, if I can.
So the reason I'm asking this question is specifically because of something that you said. And what you said is that we are like you have a problem with you called in to tell us that you disagree with this thing that we're doing. Specifically, we're giving normative deference, and I'm trying to use your words here to be faithful. You're saying we're giving normative deference to the individual. And this is not the language that Zulu and I mean, Zulu, I don't want to speak for you here, but I've never ever thought about this problem in those terms at all. So what I'm saying is I don't even understand what you're suggesting that we're doing that you have a problem with. So I'm just asking you to please, for our benefit, help us understand what you're saying. There's an
Right.
issue
So
within the first place.
Sorry, I'll put it in much more higher level framework. So earlier, I think it's Zulu said the correct way to analyze society is on the individual level, even though
Depends
the
on your
individual
depends
is
on the field of
subject
study, to
to.
be clear.
Sorry?
Depends on the field of study, to be clear. If you're analyzing society as an economist, which is what we have a position on, then the correct level of magnification is the individual.
And can you explain why? That's what I'm, because that's a normative position. You're saying correct. I don't know if you're picking up on
that. It is correct that the sky is blue. Is that a normative position?
Yeah, it's also not blue. It's just the way your eye picks up blue light.
Sure, if we're going to take epistemic normative, then everything is normative. Okay, so it doesn't really add anything. So, yeah, okay, indeed, I am making that normative claim then that the correct level of magnification for the economist is the individual.
And that's what I'm asking. I'm asking why.
Which incorrect prediction would we make in economics, which you would make correctly by being a methodological collectivist?
Well, by refusing to treat the individual as a relational agent rather than an atomized one, that's the best framing I can put it.
Which prediction would we make wrong?
Sorry?
Which prediction would we get incorrect where you would get correct?
Which prediction?
Yes, if we're going to be economists and we're trying to make predictions, which prediction would we get incorrect where you get correct?
I'm not. So
is there one?
There's a deeper framework issue there, right? So
we don't want to. We don't want to keep becoming less clear. We want to become more clear. That's what we seek to do here. We want clarity.
To answer your question, I have to point out why it's like begging the question, basically.
I'm intervening here because we're actually moving further away from the question. So again, here is like an example of what we can do that would just make this crystal clear, because there is what's implicit here is that there is some tension between a specific methodology and its alternatives.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we're looking at something, and I'm letting you choose the something. It doesn't matter what. I'm saying we're using this analytical tool to analyze something. And because
Okay.
the whole topic revolves around this tension between the two competing methodologies, I'm saying, give me an example of something we're looking at, let's say economically or
Sure.
sociologically. And what does it look like when we use methodological individualism? And what does it look like when we use the alternative or whatever alternative you choose? And that's what I'm specifically looking for. So, like for example, you could say we're looking at poverty. Here's how you analyze it methodologically, individualistically, and here's what you like. That's what we're looking for. So then we have an answer to the question: where are we going astray by implementing
Sure.
methodological individualism?
So how do you stop murder within a voluntary society?
You kill the murderers. You waved your magic wand, and then all the murderers die.
But hold on.
Okay. So what is
I'm
murder?
sorry. Hold on.
Yeah.
I thought I was really clear with the question there, so I'm gonna repeat it again. What we're looking for is, please tell us any example that you choose from the whole breadth of sociology, economics, whatever. What
Sure.
is it? What they're looking for? Tell us what you think methodological individualism does to investigate this. Tell us what you think the alternative does to investigate this, so that we can understand, we can be crystal clear about what we're discussing.
Okay. So methodological individualism. So I'm going to predict the answer because I already knew what he was going to say before he said it when I asked the question. I've engaged in these arguments before. So how do you stop murder in a voluntary society? Well, you hire someone to kill all the murderers. Notice that you're killing murderers. What's murder?
Actually, I said
That is
magic
an
wand.
intersubject. Yeah, sure. That's an interview. I've heard you say before that you'd hire someone to kill them all. And if we're using
Only
wealth
one guy.
as a
The guy's a wizard, right? He's a wizard, and he kills
right,
them all. That's my
sure.
answer.
I hire 1,000 wizards, and then I take your
I
land.
don't think you're answering Galzar's question, though.
I am though because
Well,
I'm
okay.
saying that.
So what I
So
asked you was
from a
just,
methodological individualist perspective, let me finish
so
my
you
statement. Right.
think that methodological individualism prescribes murder?
I think that you have no way to distinguish between murder and killing because that's a collectively defined thing.
Wow, Zulu. I don't know. Do you want me to answer that, or do you want to do it?
So
What?
yeah, no, murder means an unjustified killing. That is a killing where you are not allowed to do it by the norms of
By
whatever
whose
legal
standards?
theory you're using.
By whose standards?
By the norms of whatever legal theory you're using. So our legal
What legal
theory is
in your
based on the
society?
non-aggression principle. So a
Okay.
murder would be an aggressive killing on our viewpoint.
Okay.
Where did they have to bring in collectivism there? Please answer me this. And then can you please answer Galazar's question?
So where do you define what is a justified versus an unjustified? What is an aggressive versus a non-aggressive? So if I go around and I pollute the environment around your house, am I aggressing on you?
It depends.
On what?
If it initiates conflict.
Who's going to initiate conflict there?
You might initiate conflict there.
I'm just polluting the land so that you can't live in it, bro. I'm not initiating any conflict.
Okay, I just want to make a note here. You're talking to the right people if you want to have a conversation about property rights and pollution and all that. We love this stuff. We could talk about it all day. I'm sure
Sure,
that we literally could talk about it all day. This has got absolutely nothing to do with the question that I've posed to you several times now.
it does. It absolutely does. So if I monopolize a water source, am I aggressing on you?
This is a question of property rights. This is not a question of methodological individualism or
It
collectivism.
is.
And again,
How do you define that?
there's a limited amount of stones that we're going to follow you down away from the question. So I'm going to ask you the question again. I think for the benefit of the audience here, everyone's interested in knowing what the answer to this question is. Your original topic that you called in for, I've got it written on the screen here, is about methodological individualism. And I'm going to try to be super concise here because as we go further and further into this call, we're just wasting time not answering this question. There's two methodologies that are alleged. There's tension between them, and you're saying one is better than the other. You're saying methodological individualism has some
I'm not
defect.
actually.
You're
To
saying
be
that
clear,
methodological individualism has some defect.
nope.
True or
I'm
false?
saying that granting normative preference to either side of that argument is defective. It misses the forest for the trees.
Okay, so then let's say, for example, that we use methodological individualism. By implementing methodological individualism, we are committing an error because we're only using methodological individualism. So instead of asking me more questions about property rights, please just answer the question, what does it look like when we use methodological individualism and identify the error that we've made in doing so? You can apply this to any topic you want.
Can you repeat that last question?
Yes. What does it look like to apply methodological individualism as an analytical tool to any topic of your choosing? And I'm asking you this so that you can show me the defect that emerges from implementing this analytical tool.
Sure. So if you were to implement it economically, for example, right now, if you were to succeed in getting enough social pressure to achieve an anarcho-capitalist state, a voluntary society, NAP, whatever, um, you would be so your framework would inherently assume that everyone is operating on an equal playing field, which first of all, nobody is. Everyone is born into different
Nope.
systems. No? Go ahead.
Yeah, so methodological individualism doesn't assume that everybody is starting on an equal playing field. It doesn't assume that everybody has the same capital available to them. In fact, you can get from methodological individualism all of Austrian capital theory. The capitalist versus the employee. It's built on the assumption that the capitalist, he has the capital and he has done the saving and he can give the employee some money in the present. And he expects returns in the future. Like, what are you talking about? This is not at all. I don't think you understand what methodological individualism means.
That's why I was asking you to clearly define it. But
Right,
you both seem to not understand that.
Is what the unit of, for instance, economics. The unit of that study is the individual. That's all it means.
I'll elaborate on that even to just give even more for you to bite in on.
You're saying that there's no. Can you explain what the unit of the study of economics is the individual actually means? I
don't
what
understand your
part
confusion.
of economics does not interact with individuals acting in relation to each other? How do you derive money by yourself? How do you derive value of labor by yourself? I don't understand
what do you think the unit of chemistry is?
Let's just hold on. Let's just answer that question. Let's just answer that question. Where do you derive? So this is the core misunderstanding that I was hoping I dealt with earlier, and I failed. Your question reveals the misunderstanding that you have. The question was, and here, just repeat the question so I have the perfect verbatim. How do you explain money with methodological individualism? Is that your question?
No. How do you come to a value for a monetary system, an exchange of goods, without
how do you come to a value?
Yeah, so I'm trying to trade my labor for something from you, right?
Yep.
Goods, money, whatever.
Yep.
That's how we're good so far. Okay.
You know what's what is irreducible here is the you, the me, everything like that. It's the individual. That's what is irreducible here.
What is how?
Because that's how you explain each of these phenomena that you're investigating. That's what this comes down to.
There's no state trade, there's no interstate relationships, there's no
reducible.
Okay, that's what reduction means, right? So when we're talking about scientific methodology, that's what we're doing. So you're saying, okay, here's this thing we observed. We observed that there's multiple people trading right? Now, you can just stop there and say, okay, I've observed this, but what we're putting forward is that to understand what's happening here, you have to understand it as a set of individuals rather than group A, group B. So when you look at international trade and you say, here's all these people doing all these things, they're building boats, they're transporting goods on boats, there's all these people working on the boats, all these people building things, like all these extremely complex system. We're not saying that there's only individuals in isolation. It has nothing to do with isolation at all. It's all about interconnectedness. How do you explain these interactions that are happening? We're saying it happens at the individual level. So when a trade occurs, an individual prefers what they receive more than they prefer what they're giving up to receive it. That's the fundamental unit through which we understand
What
trade. Now, if you do that
what
a
is
bunch of times,
go ahead.
I'm just saying if you do that same operation any multiple of times, you haven't lost the basic unit that explains what's happening.
You have, because you're treating the basic unit as something that is atomized rather than a relational. That's the problem that I
You
keep
know where the
saying.
word atomized comes from? Do you know where the word atom comes from? It means cannot be
Yes,
cut. It is the most fundamental thing, right? And
atoms can be
so
cut.
in
Everything can be
oh
cut.
my
There is
god,
no
no
like
way! I didn't know that before now.
yeah,
So yeah,
but no,
in
it's
economics, the atom is indeed the individual. In chemistry, the atom is the atom. It's the elements, and you're studying how the elements combine and transform into other things. In quantum mechanics, yes, the fundamental element is quantum fields or whatever the hell. But that doesn't mean that we have to have quantum fields, a quantum field theory of business cycles. We don't have to have a quantum field theory of business cycles. We actually don't have to have that because you're just doing the complete wrong level of analysis. If you're a chemist, you don't care about business cycles. If you're an economist, you don't care about atoms.
why is it wrong to treat groups of people as something that should be analyzed, incorporated into your
What are you
analytical
saying?
framework?
So
Sorry?
here's why. Here's why. Okay. So if you're now, this is where Zulu can answer this question artistically if we're talking about law, and I want him to do that when I'm finished. I'm going to answer the question about economics. In economics, one of the very first principles that you learn, or at least that you should learn, is that groups don't act because in order to understand what is economic, like we're studying economics. What is economics? Economics has to do with the allocation of resources. The allocation of resources has to do with the condition of scarcity. Scarcity means that if something gets employed towards some end, it has to be the case that other alternatives that were available are gone, right? But nobody, like rocks do not employ trees. People employ things. People employ things because they have ends that they want to bring about through the employment of means. Okay. So that's what we're looking at in economics. Okay. So that's what you need to understand in order to make sense of the entire field of study in the first place. What you're studying is the process of determining how to best allocate these things, given the fact that every use you put them to forgoes all the alternatives that they could have been gone towards. That's what we're studying. Now, if you attempt to create an abstraction out of that and you say, okay, well, we have a desert island with one person on it, we can analyze that economically. Now we have two people on it, we can analyze that economically. Let's say we got a desert island with 10 people on it. Now we refer to those as I don't know, like the Maui or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, now let's say that on this island a boat is being built. And you could say, if I was talking to Zulu, I'd be like, oh, look, the Maui are building a boat because we're sailing past and we happen to observe that. Now, that's okay. We're not against casual language where you're using groups to refer to things casually. But if you're going to explain that phenomenon economically, what is the economic field of study even concerned with? It's concerned with the allocation of resources. If you're analyzing that, then you have to look at it as such. Well, questions will emerge. Who's actually involved in building the boat? Are they all building the boat? Is only some of them building the boat? Is only one of them building the boat? Are none of them building the boat? And it's just washed up on shore. And if it's the case that they're all building the boat, does that mean now that we have some other new thing that we have to consider? No. Economics, through methodological individualism, explains how multiple people collaborate on the same project, because it shows in the exact same way that a person decides to eat an apple instead of an orange, it shows that the people coming together, each individual action that contributes towards the progress of the ship is explained by the individual who performs the action, preferring it over the alternatives that were available to him. You can explain that through commerce, because there's a fiat currency that he wants to obtain, and fiat currencies naturally have to come about as a result of social. It's a social construct. You can imagine that it's because of a threat. Obviously, threats can only come about as the result of social phenomena. All of these are integral and foundational parts of the methodological individualistic process. And that is what we're talking about. That is now what I've had to do for you there was explain economics from the most fundamental all the way up to the most abstract that we can justifiably get to.
Right,
Does
but
that
you
clarify?
you jumped past the very first question I asked, and I'll post it in chat again. Where are those preferences? Where are those systems? Where are those things that the individual is relating to in their experience, which is relational, as I keep saying, it's not atomized.
Yeah, so a
Where are
preference in
those things?
economics, I'll answer your question. A preference is the description of, so individuals are doing things on purpose. Okay, that's what we're evaluating. Economics doesn't make any sense if we assume that individuals are acting without purpose. Okay, so if you look at an individual, he does something purposefully. Let's say you put, and I'm just making a hypothetical here for the purposes of your benefit illustration. You sit me at a table, and in front of me are a banana, an apple, and an orange. And I have only got time to eat one, so I eat the apple. I don't like bananas or oranges. I
Why?
prefer the apple.
Why?
Preference is the description of what was chosen relative to what was foregone.
Why are you choosing it?
That's psychology. That's not economics.
I do want to
Well,
clarify
no,
something.
applied to
I,
the
I think
scale
there's
of politics,
I
that's
think there's I think there's a
sociology.
fundamental confusion going on here. You're saying that, well, there's all these relationships between individuals, and that can't be accounted for if you've got a theory of methodological individualism. You also need to bring in some collectivism here. This is just completely at odds with how every science is done. So I want to just elaborate upon my chemistry example from earlier. It is in fact not the case that because the chemist has the atomic model, that he can no longer model relationships between atoms and figure out chemical equations and figure out how molecules work and different crystal structures and all that. It's in fact the opposite. Because he has the atomic model, because they figured out the atomic model, they were able to figure out what molecules are and what all these different things are, right? It's because they had that atomic model, because they figured out the proper unit of their study. That's how they worked out the rest. So I think you're just deeply confused on that point.
Can I push back on that? And sorry, this got a bit more combative than I was initially intending it to, because I feel like there was uh, a miscommunication happening between both of us, where I was trying to sort out the normative part of that. But so you're saying that atomization in chemistry actually did allow us to figure out the relational things, and that's why we should be looking at this from an individual perspective, right? Am I correct in your?
Yeah, because relationships are fundamentally relationships between the units of your study, right? The
Right,
atoms in the case
and that works at some
individuals in the
scales,
case of
but
atomics.
right, and that works at some scales, but like you alluded to earlier, at small and large scales, the things that we're studying react differently.
Yeah. So what
They don't
happens
work on
is
the
in
same.
society is that you have things like you have institutions that involve lots of people, and those institutions look like states, for example. And a state can implement a tax that applies to everybody. Now, that's an example of something that is greater than the individual because so many people are involved. How do you understand what taxation is? You have to do it by understanding it through an individualistic lens. How do you understand what the results of taxation are? You have to do it through an individualistic lens. You have to look at things like, okay, how does this change the the ordinal ranking of preferences that the individuals affected by the taxes are going to have? How does this change the allocation of resources? How does this distort prices? All of those things have to be investigated by the individual. So please tell us
So,
an example of what we can't do with methodological individualism.
sure, you've got two societies. One of them is producing vastly more GDP growth. It's also experiencing extreme centralization of wealth and power. The other has intentionally kneecapped itself economically to better the individuals within it.
Can I just have to to see if I've got this? There's the one society, Society A. It has a massive centralization of power, with a massive GDP growth, and the other
Yep.
has a decentralization of power with a massive GDP decrease.
To be more specific, country B has implemented um, market restraints to redistribute wealth within its society, and that decentralization of wealth has also reduced its GDP.
Sorry, I just want to point out that this hypothetical was provided in response to me asking for an example of something that methodological individualism can't explain. You just gave the hypothetical,
Right.
didn't
So,
say
in
anything.
your model, how would you address this, or explain this, or
Explain what? It's a hypothetical. Can you be a little bit more specific?
right? So, why is one country choosing to? Why are the
Nope.
individuals in one country?
Nope.
Go ahead.
I just want to pause you right there. So economics is not concerned with why people choose to do A or B. It's not concerned with that. It is concerned with, given that somebody chose A or B or so on and so forth, what can we tell about their value structures? What can we tell about this or that? What will be the effects of this? That is what economics studies. So what is the incorrect prediction that the Austrian economist would make about this? Like, all we want is the incorrect prediction that we're making, which we would make correctly if we adopted whatever your economic theory is.
Well, like there's any any number of them. So
Give one.
under your, sorry.
Just give one. If there's any number of predictions we make incorrectly, just give one.
Well, would you predict that individual actors would be able to prevent coercion?
Outside the scope of economics.
Well, that's why specifically you're trying to narrow this very specifically to an economic argument, and I already told you that I'm trying to take it to the
So
presuppositions that both
I
the
want to be
economic
very
and the
clear.
sociology rely on.
Galzar earlier gave you the opportunity to pick any field you want and declare, hey, methodological individualism in this field makes incorrect predictions in this way. Now I am going to go ahead and narrow it down to economics.
I did. I gave
gonna
you
go ahead and
sociological positions, and you
just
keep jumping to
explain
economics.
in economics which incorrect prediction are we making? What is the error?
I'm pointing to the sociological predictions, political predictions,
That's
not
not
specific
economics.
economic.
Okay,
I'm
so look,
sorry.
I'll just play ball. All right, my academic background's in psychology. So if you're going to ask why does somebody make a certain position, it's still methodologically individualistic. You have to do it through the individual. You have to say, okay, there's a set of people. Why did they act this way? Each one's going to have a different reason, a different relationship with the whole, with the group, with the other people that group refers to. They're going to have like that's so psychology fully methodologically individualistic still. You want to talk about sociology, it's still the same thing. Because if you're going to say, okay, we have a group of people and I have an observation about a group of people doing something and I want to explain this, then you still have to understand you're talking about individuals doing something. They chose to do it, right? Now,
You're talking
perhaps
about a society.
you're talking, well, society is a set of individuals.
Do you?
Is
I don't know
society
if you
not
realize
a
what
set
you're
of
doing.
individuals?
Sorry.
Is society not a set of individuals?
Is a society a category of a thing that is worth being analyzed?
Is sorry,
I'm not sure about you, but that doesn't
I'll
sound like
answer
an
your
answer.
question. You answer my question. Is it the case or not that society is a set of individuals?
Societies are composed of individuals, correct?
Okay. Well, that's essentially what we're getting at. So,
Yes.
what is it that a society does? Give me an example of any observation you can make. Here, this is the most specific I think we can get it. Give me any example of an observation that you can make that cannot be explained by methodological individualism.
No, you're misunderstanding my original contention with the whole thing. I'm trying to understand how it can be coherently implemented as a part of your anarcho-capitalist framework.
Okay,
So I
Because
so
want to be very
if
what
you
I'm
want
clear.
to shift
understanding from these,
if you want to shift to
no,
to that topic, that's fine.
there's
So do
well,
you
the,
just
yeah,
grant then? Do you just grant then that there is nothing that methodological individualism can't explain?
absolutely not. No,
Okay, give me an example of that, please.
everything that is only able to be analyzed from the perspective of a society.
Perfect. That is exactly what an answer doesn't look like. Please provide me an example of such a thing. Anything. Any example.
Right. So
I said, give me an
I
example of
don't even
something
know
that
how to engage with this,
methodological
but the entire field of sociology is based on treating societies as categories of things that are worth being like compared against each other on axes,
Is one
whatever
economics,
thing
axes
that
you want to
field.
use.
economics, psychology, all kinds of fields look at groups as part of their analysis. That is not relevant to what methodological individualism
No,
is or
sociology
does.
is the study of it's the study of societies as a unit.
Right.
The entire
So
field, you have to give normative
if
deference to that
if
analytical framework to even have a
if
sociology.
if you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate if you would give me an example of a observation that cannot be explained through methodological individualism.
The entire field of sociology relies on not
So that is not an
methodological
answer.
individualism.
So I'm going to give, for
Yes,
the
it
benefit of the
is.
whole audience, I'm going to give an example of what answering a question looks like. So if I say, give me an example of something that methodological individualism can't explain, and you say, here are examples that, like, all of this is what methodological individualism can't explain, and you point to nothing, that means you didn't answer the question. So if you wouldn't
Do you
mind,
think sociology means nothing? Sociology is the study of societies in relation to each other. That's the whole point of the field.
Just give a
economics.
particular example, just one particular example. Say, hey, well, the fucking Soviet Union in this period did X, Y, or Z, and you can't predict that would happen on your theory. Just do something like that.
That's not the way my argument is
Jesus Christ.
interfacing with your belief system. I don't know why you keep asking for that. I'm not going to give it to you.
Okay, so so then you're saying you cannot provide an example of anything that
The
methodological
entire field of
individualism.
sociology, I just gave it to you.
That's I don't know what your academic background is, but that
What is
is
sociology? What is that?
so. What we do when we're having a polite conversation is we answer questions back and forth. And I'm going to get you to answer my question before I answer any of your questions. So, if you don't
Sure.
mind, what is an example of something that methodological individualism cannot explain?
Because sociology is the study of societies in relation to each other and treating societies as individual units worth being analyzed, you cannot use a purely individualistic framework to engage with the field of sociology.
You
Can
just
you
said
can you
yourself that societies are groups of individuals, so that explanation falls short. Now, we're asking you for an
Are individuals
example.
composed of cells?
When I say,
can
give
you
me an example of an observation that can't be explained, and you say sociology is a field of study, that is not an answer. would you please give me an example of an observation that cannot be explained? I don't care if you're saying it's an observation from the sociological field of study. I have experience in sociology. I'm asking you to please give me an example of an observation that cannot be
Do
explained
you
by
understand what I'm
methodological
saying?
individualism. Of
Like,
course.
I just want to ask, like, we can jump back from
No,
the
name one
argumentative.
answer.
fact in sociology. Just name one fact in sociology. You think the
I
entire
have been
thing can't be
consistently,
explained
but I want you to.
by methodological. Just give
I'm
us
not
one
going to do
observation in
the
sociology. Just one observation in sociology, please.
no, because I'm not going to play the game.
You don't
here.
know
We're
any
going down the rabbit
observations in
hole.
sociology. You know no sociological facts.
None. I don't know anything.
Okay, so then you have conceded defeat on that point. Would you like to ask us a different question?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you engage with the field of sociology?
Well, we normally read books, we write articles, we do research. That's if you're a sociologist. I think that what you
is
should do, if you're really interested in finding out an answer to that question, what you should do is perhaps enroll in a university. I don't think we have the time here to.
What sociology is?
Like I said before, you're calling into a call-in show. You've answered none of our questions, and I'm not going to go through here and start going through all the dictionary definitions that you want me to list off for you. If you can give me an example, if you can give me an example of a observation that methodological individualism is unable to explain, then I will give you a definition of sociology off the cuff.
Why?
Are you trying to just crawl back into aura here? Like you're just trying to claw back the aura.
I'm literally just asking you guys because I don't think you understand the point I'm making. So I want to hear it from your mouth. What is sociology?
That you look like an insane person right now. You need to understand this. Nobody is following you here. Nobody is going along with you here. Nobody thinks you sound cool right now. I need you to understand.
Is this like a self-soothing technique?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, so what is sociology?
So do you have any response? Do you have any answer for like a single fact that we cannot predict?
I do.
With methodological individualism.
I'm giving you
Go
one
ahead.
right now, but
give one single observation. If I can just peel my eyes open and look at one thing,
I'll give you one if you answer the definition.
No,
give me one thing I can look
question.
in the world with my eyes peeled, and I do not predict it with my Austrian framework. Just give me that one thing. I've got my eyes peeled right now. Just
sure.
Tell me
can you tell me what sociology is, and then I'll give you one.
No. Just
do you understand the nature of a call-in show? I'm curious. You had a question for us. The question wasn't what is sociology.
I didn't actually. I had a debate scheduled with Ask ANCAP about a specific subject, and then he dodged me.
No.
Am I here? Am I present? I don't understand.
You immediately dodged the framing of our debate, which was your claim was collectivism is bad, whereas collectivism is defined as any normative deference to the collective.
I would never use that. I would never use that language. So, I mean, is that your paraphrasing of something I said? Are you checking your notes?
I think he's asking.
Yeah, I'm finding your specific notes. Here, this is what you said.
Okay, I'm going to just read this out, and we'll just see. So what this caller sent me a definition of methodological individualism, which is this. Methodological individualism says that all social phenomena, prices, institution, norms, wars, markets, states, everything must be ultimately explained as the result of the actions, interactions, beliefs, expectations, and choices of individual persons. There are no acting wholes over and above individuals. Groups don't act. Individuals don't act in patterned ways that we summarize as groups. I'm happy to accept that definition. Zulu, do you have any issue with that definition?
Let me just so the all social phenomena, blah 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 blah. Ultimately explained as the actions, a result of the actions of blah 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 individual persons. Yeah, I accept that. The collective isn't the thing acting. I completely agree with that.
Cool. So here you are in a conversation with us. You want to answer our questions. You're accusing me of evading you for whatever reason. I'm here talking with you for over an hour now. I'm wondering, let's say, hypothetically, I not only here, you can choose. Either I can't tell you what sociology is. I literally don't know what it is. Or I give you a definition, but you're like, haha, those aren't the exact words that are correct. Because
No, that's
okay,
not what I
no,
was
no,
trying to get at. I'm sorry. I got heated because it seemed like you guys were dodging something that was pretty obvious. Sociology,
you got
the
heated
entire
because you
field that
felt
that
that we were
studies.
dodging something. Well,
Yeah, because
I'm glad that you can understand where we're coming from then.
absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so would you be interested then? It's because you just sent us a definition. I read it out for the benefit of the audience. You sent us a definition and we agreed with it. Now, if you would please share with us any observation whatsoever of any kind that would not be, as we said in the definition that you sent us and we agreed to, that would not have to be explained ultimately as the result of actions and interactions of people. Any observation.
That's not what. So this is not what my issue is with your framework. I should say. I'm
Your
not saying that
issue.
that
I
things
Okay,
aren't.
okay. I got to
I'll
do
say-
this. I got to do this. I got to do this.
Can I just
There's
explain what I was
no.
saying
You can't.
before
You
you jump
cannot.
in?
You cannot. You cannot.
Okay.
You are not answering any questions, and I have other
Yeah.
callers in the queue. So I will let you have as much time as you want. I will stay here with you forever if you answer any questions that we pose. Otherwise, I am going to move on to other callers. Any
Sure.
question? Can you answer? Okay. So
Yep.
you provided us with a definition that you want to hold us to,
Yep.
that you disagree with,
Yep.
and the definition we shared with the group. Now, if you wouldn't mind, politely, I'm asking you if you would share with us an observation that is not explained ultimately through the actions of individuals.
The language in which you think.
Okay. So, how you explain language is through the actions of individuals. Individuals, it is the individual who experiences language. It's the individual who chooses to implement language. It's the individual who learns the language. And it's the
Did you
individual's idiosyncrasies that change language over time. Just like in
did you
something like,
choose? Sorry, I don't mean to push back on you so quickly, but did you choose to think your thoughts in English?
let's answer the question this way. Tell me what implication you think it has if we say yes and if we say no.
I think that if you say no, you are granting that the individual is not and never can be purely atomized. It cannot be a individual node of experience interacting in a purely discretely uh, oppositional, not part of itself world. Everything is interconnected. Um,
Methodological individualism does not posit isolation. Methodological individualism
it,
is about interconnectedness.
can I? So, pushing back on that, it does posit that the interconnectedness has to be examined from the individual perspective rather than from the collective or the intersubjective perspective. That's why I was pushing back on the sociology part, because sociology is literally treating societies as units which can be compared upon axes. It is treating them as units.
So I'm just curious here. What do you think the role of language is? Do you think it doesn't or indeed arise from individuals naming things? Like, does it arise from the society which sends the language down to the individuals? Like, I'm just confused here.
Yeah, when you're a baby, you get basically beamed language and values into you by the people around you. You don't have
People?
any autonomy over that.
Those are individuals.
Well, they're also being beamed into them by other individuals. It goes all the
Where did
way
it
up.
come
That's
from
what you have a
initially?
society. Sorry?
Where did it come from initially, though?
It's a relational. It's originally a relationship
A
between two
relationship
things,
between what?
not one person. Sorry?
Relationship between what?
Me, you, and the thing that comes from between
Individuals.
those two things. No?
Cinema. It seems we've
Three
arrived
things.
back at the individual level here.
Three
It's a
things.
relationship between
Me, hold on.
individuals.
Can I just
Crazy, I
me,
know. Wow, how did we
Me?
get here? It's
Can I?
if only somebody had predicted this.
Is
How
this a
could anybody
self-soothing technique?
predict this? Yes, it's
Is this a
self-soothing
self-soothing
technique.
technique? Yeah.
Yes,
So
that's
there's me,
exactly what it
you,
is.
and the relationship between those two things.
Me,
Otherwise, there's
you.
nothing.
What are me and you?
Individuals, and what's the relationship?
Ah, wow, crazy.
Well, it's a good thing that we
What's
have
the relationship?
methodological individualism, whose purpose
Wait,
is to
what's the
understand
relationship?
relationships.
Hold on. No, go back. Me, you, and the relationship. What's the relationship?
There are many relationships between us. Of course, I'm your tomboy lover. There's that, but of course, you don't want to mention that. There are many. I'm your master in the bedroom. There's that relationship between us. There's many relationships between us.
Right. So when you say me and you as individuals, and then the relationship between us, what is that?
I don't know what you're getting at here. That is that. What are you trying to dig at?
What is it? What is it?
What is what?
The relationship between two individuals. What is that?
A relationship between two individuals. You want to call it glue?
Is that? But that's not either me or you.
Yes,
That's
glue.
the relationship
That's
between
what it
us.
is. It's glue. Yeah. So the car crash isn't
Wait.
in the car
Okay,
or the.
so explain an individual. Like, I want you to explain the relationship. Now you're pointing to it. You're like, that's
Right.
the thing that's not the individuals. Do it without any reference to individuals.
You can't, and you can't do it the other way either.
Yes, we
Whoa!
You
can.
can't do it either way.
Yes, we can.
No.
We just did.
There's me
Would you
and
like us to
you,
do it
and
again
there's a
for your benefit?
relationship. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So what kind of a relationship? Just give me any example of a relationship between two people.
What I'm getting at, I don't know if
That's
you're
not the answer to the question.
So any relationship,
That's right.
you see someone.
Okay. And I can't explain this relationship without just the individuals?
Yeah. Moreover, could you explain me seeing you without reference to me or you?
Could you explain it without
Could
you
you
interacting
explain that
with?
relationship floating on?
No,
Sorry, could
hold
you
on.
explain without reducing it into the
Reverse your own
individuals who are
question,
seeing each other?
because you're making my argument for me. I'm saying you shouldn't give preference to
Yeah,
either
this
side.
is
You're
your argument.
saying it is. Reverse your last
Your
question.
argument is that
Reverse.
everything is ultimately reducible to individuals.
No, my argument is that you cannot analyze
That was
the
my argument.
society in which individuals operate purely based on individualistic or collective frameworks.
Could you reduce it into the individuals?
You can in some cases, but you cannot always.
Give me an
Where-
example of
when
a case when you can't.
So the entire field of sociology, I already did.
Give one example in the field of sociology. Just one.
Well,
Is avoiding this question a self-soothing technique?
No, because it's a redundant question. What part of sociology relies
Hold on. I
societies to
just
be
want to.
treated
I
as
want to spotlight this. I think you said something
every part of
brilliant, and I
sociology?
want to bring attention to what you just said. We are interested in and debating the topic of methodological individualism, and the core point that you're making here is that sociology is a collection of things that methodological individualism can't explain. Okay, that's what we're talking about, and you just hit us with the actual contents of sociology are irrelevant. I just really want to give that some
hit
space.
you. I hit you with that. The distinction within the fields of sociology that you're asking me to make are irrelevant because the entire field relies on treating collectives
Okay, so
as
I'm going to
being
go ahead
analytically
and make a
fruitful.
claim here. The entire field of sociology, in fact, depends upon methodological individualism. Can you give me a single counterexample to this claim?
Yes,
Go on.
because the entire field relies on treating societies as the unit of analysis,
No,
not
just
the
one
individuals
counterexample.
within
This is a good opportunity for the audience to benefit from some education here. Maybe not everybody here is academic in their background. So methodological individualism, the question is, can it be reduced to individuals? Not so. The idea of sociology is that because sociology studies groups, that you can't have a group that's only one individual, right? That's the idea. So there's this sort of schism between these things here. But methodological individualism is not about individuals in isolation. It's about explaining what we observe through the understanding that the individuals are the ultimate thing that you reduce the analysis to. So the fact that sociology is concerned with groups is not only compatible with methodological individualism, it is the thing that methodological individualism was invented to interrogate. So this is well, I would say that it would be a very interesting thing indeed to see you speak to a sociologist about this. Most of the texts that you will read about the topic of methodological individualism are not about economics. They're not about psychology either. Methodological individualism emerges primarily in the sociological literature. So
That's what I was trying to get at earlier. Yes, but I was trying to point out that it relies on a normative preference or I won't
Just
use
one
that word because I think it's
counterexample.
bugging you guys. It's tripping you guys up. I will
Just one
use the word.
counterexample.
What's that?
Just one counterexample to my claim that all of sociology relies upon methodological
Macro
individualism.
sociology.
No, one counterexample, please.
What are you asking for?
One single instance where we're making a false prediction. One single fact of sociology, which in fact does not rely upon methodological individualism. That
So
is
the
one
emergent
sociological fact which cannot be reduced into individuals acting. That's all I
right.
want.
Right. So macro sociology, sociology in general,
one
deals
fact.
with the relational.
I'm
Hold
not
on.
asking in
The
general.
emergent.
One particular fact.
in science, you would not be permitted to step foot on the institution's grounds if you couldn't differentiate between an observation and a field of study. This is an absurd conversation at this point. We're asking you for the observation. We're not asking you to list fields of study. Please share an observation with us before I drive my head through the wall. Please. Not a rationalization. Not a rationalization.
No, the question is incomprehensible.
Okay, I have to pause. I'm going to just, please, an observation. Please.
An observation of an outcome that purely individualistic framework would not be able to account for.
Thank you. Yes.
The emergent structures that
Which one?
appear out of relationships between collectives.
If you ask a biologist for an example of an organism, they would point at a dog and go, oh, there it is. A dog is an example of an organism. Okay?
I just was
if you ask for an organ,
they
would tell you it's the kidney is an organ. If you ask for a tissue, they would say the skin is made up of layers of tissue.
When you cut me off, I was
saying, no, you're not answering the question. You're not answering the question.
For example, religious syncretism is not an individual thing.
What is it?
It is an emergent thing between societies. Religious syncretism? Religious syncretism?
Increticism?
Syncretism?
Oh.
Religious syncretism. Is that what you're saying?
Syncretism is when like two different religions or cultures collide and then a new thing emerges.
So we can't explain that. So we can't explain that. We can't.
Yes.
Okay. So here's how you explain it, right?
Not an individual thing.
So what is an idea if not something that is possessed by an individual, right? And ideas have characteristics.
Not. Where are you getting your ideas from, sir?
From all kinds of places, including other individuals.
You don't come up with any on your own?
No, I'm basically an idiot, but I can point to all kinds of individuals who are the source of inspiration for my thinking. May I proceed?
Where do you get your definition of an idea from?
Other people.
Right, and where do you get the words that you use to comprehend that sentence from?
Other people.
So where are you? What are you?
Individual.
How?
What part of you is individual? I am a society myself. So
you're what most people would call a relational agent.
I am a relationship.
Okay. So, like I said before, I feel like somebody got stumped there. I'm not going to suggest it was one of us or the other. When you have this idea, religious syncretism is the idea that people's ideas are affected by other people. Can you explain people being influenced by other people methodologically, individualistically? Well, like I said before, the fundamental tenet of methodological individualism has nothing to do with individuals being isolated units, but it actually has to do with explaining those interactions as the fundamental thing that's happening is the individual. So what happens when an idea so let's say I'm building I'm making a game, a board game, and I'm building checkers, and then I see a horse, and or no, I don't even just see a horse in nature. Somebody comes up and shows me a photo they took of a horse, and I say I should integrate this into my chess game or my checkers game. I think I'm going to have pieces that are shaped like things now. I've just combined two ideas. Can we explain this through treating the individual as the fundamental unit? That had nothing to do with saying the individual did it in the absence of other people. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with understanding that the being, the entity that's exercising agency here, that explains the unification of these ideas, is the individual. That's all that methodological
I'm not
individualism says.
denying that part of what you're saying is true. Where I'm drawing a
What part
difference
is
here,
all
and I want
false?
to be very clear. Well, no, it's not all false. What you're saying, everything you just said is true. The thing is, what is also true is that there are the exact same processes going on between societies, and there are emergent things that happen only on the societal level.
Nope.
Can you prove that?
Absolutely. A society, like you said yourself earlier, is a pointer that references a set of individuals. A pointer
Just
that
like your
references a
body
set of
is a pointer
individuals
that references a set of cells. Yes.
cannot have a mind. Mind is an activity that a brain does. Okay, an abstraction that we use linguistically does not possess a brain, does not have ideas. So to say, when you say two societies are blending their ideas together, you're talking about individuals blending their ideas at an individual level. Obviously,
No,
because
I
the
mean, we could
alternative,
get into the whole. The alternative would be like something like a Geist, right? Which is like a very well documented philosophical, whole sociological framework with which to,
yes, there's all kinds
dialectical,
of things
all
that
this
are
stuff.
there's all kinds of things that are written about extensively in philosophy. That's not quite an observation, but regardless, if you are trying to suggest to us that we have these brains out there that have no physical existence whatsoever, and they are manifested by a sufficient amount of individual people having an idea in common, I would say publicly that that is laughable. And so when you describe this event, you're saying this event took place. The group A's immaterial supernatural brain and group B's immaterial supernatural brain were thinking, and they swapped notes, and then they said, okay, well, we got some new ideas now. That's crazy, but here's something that might not be so crazy. To say that there's a culture is to say that there's this set of individuals who have things in common. Well, that's not a violation of methodological individualism at all. And so you've got all these individuals who have things in common, and one or two or all of those individuals interact with other individuals who have things not so in common with them. And they take in this new information, and they think about it, and they reject some aspects of it. They make use of other aspects of it. And before you know it, the day passes. And as a consequence of time moving forward, there's different ideas. They've been changed by their interactions with other people. Again, for everybody who might be new to this call, I'm sure some people died along the way since this began. Methodological individualism is not about individuals acting in isolation. It's about understanding things that are happening collectively by seeing the individual as the actual fundamental unit.
Right, and I'm saying that when we let me use the metaphor of a war, right? So you've got two individual soldiers on either side who are fighting each other, right? And there are some emergent relationships, some things that are emerging from their individual atomized relationship to each other, right? There's
Okay, I
also
just
during a
let me
war
just say that
something,
back to you because I want to make sure
yeah.
I'm understanding you. So there's a war taking place, but you're asking us to look at just two of the individuals that are fighting in the war.
Yes,
So
and
let's just say they're
you're
medieval soldiers and they're in a sword fight.
right,
Okay.
right, exactly. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on the individual level. You're right. There is an individual locus of experience, suffering, all the experiences that those individual people had that contribute to their being. Some of which are, um, maybe we can say their own personality shining through. Some of them are just whatever life you roll the dice, and this is the personality you kind of got out of it, right? But there's an emergent thing happening between that sword fight, right? Maybe one of them loses. There's also an emergent thing happening between the armies, the total war going on around them. And those emergent things can only be analyzed when you're looking at the actual group rather than the individuals. So even though
Okay.
you can deduce every single battle to one knight versus another, there's something going on there that's has to do with the collectives merging.
Yep, and that's where you misunderstand methodological individualism, because methodological individualism is not denying those other things. It's saying that everything is reducible to the individual, which you just said.
No, I'm saying that, well, it's
Can I ask
reducible,
a
but it's
question?
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, what do you think is the unit of economics? Like, you don't think it's the individual. Like, what is the unit of economics?
The unit of economic. I'm less concerned with the economics argument because I'm going to be honest with you. Economics is really not my field. I come from like a
Okay, then
philosophy
sociology.
of
Like, what would be the unit of
yeah.
sociology?
Right. So so in my the what I was trying to get at earlier would be there is um a me, right, and then a you, and then a relationship that emerges between them, right? So we can call that relationship a non-physical thing, right?
Okay.
And I'm saying that if you're purely atomizing, analyzing the individuals themselves, their perspectives, on some levels, when enough individuals get together, there are emergent things that can only be identified if you're looking at the way the groups themselves are. So you have to use not the individuals within them, the actual groups as a whole in your analysis.
But
So
like,
I'm not saying that you
okay,
guys are
so is the
wrong
group
to break it.
is the group the unit?
In some cases, yes, yeah, you have to use the group as the unit, yeah.
In which cases?
So that's why I was getting at with like macro sociology, right? So like large scale uh analysis of the way that people interact and how those
It
different
seems to me
interactions
that your
are.
examples of that thus far do indeed reduce down into the individuals. Like what, like
Well, they reduce
metaphysically, what do you
down,
think
but
is
they
literally happening? Do you think there's literally this thing, this entity called a group, which is causing something to occur? Or do you think
yeah,
it's an emergent structure?
it itself is an emergent structure, but it also has emergent
And that
properties well, the same way that an individual is an emergent structure, right? Like you're not all the cells in your body. You're something that you identify with your brain and your body as like a abstraction of your brain, right?
and like what do you think you are correctly predicting in sociology by having this theory, which we are
So
incorrect?
what I keep pointing at it, right, is like the macro, like the large scale interactions between. So
Just one
I don't know
example,
how to
please.
put this in simpler terms. That because again, I don't come from an economic background. I'm putting this in sociological terms, right? Person A and person B interact in some way. Out of their interaction becomes this C, which we'll call their relationship, which is a non-physical thing. We scale
Right,
this
but what
up.
are we
So
incorrectly
now we've got,
predicting?
sorry,
But what are we incorrectly predicting?
you won't be able to predict the way that large scale societies produce emergence
Can you give a
through
particular,
the group. Sorry.
like some particular prediction that we would make incorrectly?
Well, if you're looking at it purely as individuals within the collectives, you're not going to be able to predict. For example, like I was talking about with syncretism, there have been plenty of times where
Just one particular instance of that.
right. So like the spreading of religions, heretical religions, the the way these emerge when
we wouldn't be able to predict on methodological individualism that a certain religion would take over.
you wouldn't be able to predict that two societies coming together would produce a religion that both of them kill people for believing it, if you're treating these as purely rational, atomized individuals.
So, I mean, I'm not a sociologist or anything, but it strikes me that this is outside of anarcho-capitalism. So I suppose I just want to make that clear. This is not anarcho-capitalism has nothing to do with predicting whether religions will coalesce or what have you.
Well,
so I could throw it
Not
back
even what sociology is about.
Okay, well there you go.
We're talking more along the lines of anthropology, I guess, would be the better.
It's not even what anthropology is about.
Sorry?
That is not what anthropology or sociology are about. If you walked into any classroom or any professor's office or any academic and you said, I'm going to analyze the data and predict X, anything along what you just predicted, they would be like, oh, okay, security?
What do you think I just predicted?
What?
Well, you were supposed to be predicting that certain religions would coalesce and they would try and kill each other.
You don't think that would be... No, that's not what I was predicting at all.
Okay, so what did you predict, which we didn't predict? Like a specific event in history. That you would be able to predict
historical. Yeah, right. So for example, I pointed to the syncretism that emerged when Islam spread throughout the North African coast. A lot of belief systems that
wouldn't that
emerged
be reducible into the individuals?
Well, because the individuals were acting in ways that were not
how could you predict that
about
on the
their individual
level?
Sorry?
And how could you predict that on the collectivist level? Let's just get that first. Like, how would you predict that?
You would need this is what I keep saying. I'm not trying to say that collectivism is better than individualism. I'm trying to say that you need both of them to do different types of analysis. Sorry?
How did you predict that? On your framework, whatever the hell it is, how would you go ahead and predict that?
Because it would have enough depth of analysis to be able to not only predict the way individuals would interact with each other, but also the way that individuals embedded in societies would interact with other societies.
Your framework would predict that Islam would take over.
I just did.
No, saying that there would be tools is not telling you what tools or how they would get used. He's asking you to explain the process. And you're saying, well, we would just have sufficiently developed science that we could figure it out.
No, I'm saying that in order to analyze the way that groups have emergent properties when they interact with each other, you can't just only analyze things on an individualistic level.
Use your framework and predict for me that Islam would take over in that area at that time, using no modern information. Just use your framework, apply it to the information at that time to predict that Islam would take over.
I am nowhere near capable of doing that.
Okay, so
that's not what my argument is. You're misunderstanding my argument. Can I rephrase it?
So you just lied to me.
Can you repeat what my argument just was?
I asked you for an example where we wouldn't predict something where you would be able to predict it, and you gave me something which apparently you're not able to predict.
What did I tell you?
What's happened here?
What did I tell you?
You told me that your system would be able to predict that Islam would arrive in some area at some time.
Not at all what I said.
Okay, so what prediction do you make that we couldn't make?
So the way we were just talking,
just tell me the prediction.
I need to step back because that was like a very telling moment.
What is the prediction?
Argument we were just
give me the prediction.
Are you going to let me talk, or are you going to keep cutting me off?
Prediction.
Nope.
You're not going to be okay. So then, what are we doing here?
Okay.
Next caller, I guess.
I have no idea why you're cutting me off in the middle of me trying to answer your conversation because I'm not answering it the way you want me to.
So here's what I'm going to do. So you just said that we cut you off in the middle of answering a question. Immediately after, there was a long silence. Zulu said, "Give me a prediction," and then after a long silence where we weren't talking at all, you said no, and you characterized that interaction as us cutting you off. So
Well,
what
hold
we're
on,
gonna
hold on.
do,
What pursued that silent?
what we're gonna
What
have to mute your microphone. What we're
hold
gonna
on.
do,
What pursued that?
no. What we're gonna have to
Sir?
do, what we're gonna have to do in this case then is move on to our next caller because we're not making any progress here. It's very difficult to make progress when you will not answer any questions that we have, and we've spent a great deal of time in here. So I want to say thank you so much for spending all this time with us. It's been very generous with your trying to do that. We're going to give you the last word instead of having the last word ourselves, of course, as customary on the show. We're going to give you the last word. So if you can summarize your point in, I don't know, less than 3 minutes, please do so. And we'll move on to the next caller. You're free to speak. You are muted right now, but you're free to speak. Oh, I think so. I'm getting some I would say maybe a little bit abusive private messages on Discord from this individual now. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I guess they're not satisfied with the interaction we're having.
Yeah,
here
I was going to say I will not say thank you for coming on.
Whew. Listen, everybody, I have to confess a great sin. I was enjoying that. I like talking about methodological individualism. I like talking about scientific methodology in general. And I was indulging myself there. And I can see that we've got a very healthy number of viewers here. And of course, we've got my co host here who's even more subjective to the torture than you guys are. And that was selfish of me. And I will atone for that in the future.
It's selfish of you, and that's why it was great. This was a great call. And I've told Monhop to clip this to shit. Everybody out there should clip this call. Go out there, get your clipping hands on, clip it, and post this far and wide. Everybody needs to see this.